Welcome to Education Matters, presented by the Public School Forum of North Carolina. I'm your host, Marianne Wolf. Today, we are continuing a series with the North Carolina Regional Teachers of the Year to learn more about what is happening in classrooms across the state. I'd like to welcome to the show three Regional Teachers of the Year, Erin Ellington, Kelly Poquette, and Jennifer Attkisson. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure to be here.
So excited to have you joining us today. And here we are 3 weeks or a month into the school year. And I would love just to hear a little bit about how are things going and how is this year similar to or different from what you expected?
We've had a great start to the year. It's been a busy start, but a good one. Very joyful to have our students back. Last year, we were in a unique position because of our smaller size that we were able to offer the choice between in-person and remote learning from the get-go last year. Throughout the year, students trickled back in. And by the end of the year, we had about 90% of our students at our school in person. And then this year, of course, we're 100% back face-to-face, which is wonderful. It's so nice to have, even in the midst of the COVID that keeps going, it's nice to have that consistency and stable environment of the school. And that has been a very positive thing for teachers, students, and our families.
From a little bit different perspective, because of course last year we were a little bit different than Jen in that we were starting completely remote. And then I think it was around end of February, we went to a hybrid model where families were able to choose if they were going to stay in person, if they're going to do hybrid. This fall, we have fully back in person like normal, but we also are offering something different in Alamance-Burlington this year as we're offering the Alamance Virtual School. So I think it's a unique opportunity came from it, and our district grabbed that opportunity and opened a brand new school. It's not a one-year thing. It's not a one-off. It's like a real school that's open. So we gave more opportunities to our families so they were able to choose where their child could be successful and what fits best for them.
And Erin, you're coming to us from the western part of our state in Watauga County. How about you?
We are here in our fifth week of school, and I will say that my expectations were completely wrong, and in a good way. We have. I was anticipating folks coming back from many not being in school for a very long time, folks being partly virtual, partly in person last year, because we did all of that has already been mentioned. We did a lot of those, and so I really was expecting kids to have a really hard time coming back to school and adjusting to the routine and getting used to being in school again. And I was completely wrong. I have already told multiple people so far this year that it is the best start to my year in umpteen years of teaching, many years of this teaching.
We know that while you're all making the best of every moment, I can tell, I'm sure there are still some challenges and also opportunities that you're thinking about this year. And Kelly, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about that from your own classroom, but also from this Regional Teacher of the Year perspective.
There's some unique opportunities for teachers to come together and for teacher voice to be heard. And I'll speak from the Regional Teacher of the Year perspective, and that all of us are working in our and we have 9 regions in the state, to really make connections like down to the district teachers of the year and to create leadership councils in each district so that we can hear what is happening at every single school. And it's something that hasn't necessarily been done before. And then we can take, as RTOIs, we can take that information to the state level, and we're part of a teacher leadership council at the state level with our superintendent and other voices. So I think that we're working together as a team to really empower our educators to elevate our students, and to do that by hearing teacher voice, because there's no way that I in the Piedmont Triad can know what's happening in Guilford County or in all my other counties. I need those teachers to say, this is what's happening. So I think that is something that's very exciting this year, because it's empowering, and we've learned how extremely important the teacher voice really is, and how and there wouldn't be anything if there wasn't teachers. There wouldn't be engineers, there wouldn't be doctors, there wouldn't be anything because they need to be taught by someone. So I think that's a really big thing that I'm excited about this year, is just really making those connections and having those collaborations to do what's best for our students and for our teachers.
One of the things I know we've heard a lot about is just the academic, but also the social emotional learning needs. And we've always known this is important, right? I mean, this is not new to any of us. I wonder, Jennifer and Erin, if you can talk a little bit about some of the things that you've been doing to support our students academically, but also social and emotional learning wise as well.
We, and actually our district, we took on the initiative of starting social and emotional learning actually pre-COVID. We did a lot with the ACEs and that childhood trauma and how that impacts, throughout. So I was so thankful for that when we were in the midst of the shutdown for COVID. But coming out of that, we are implementing those things here. We have not only a counselor within each of our schools, but we have counseling teams. We also have a school social worker and a full-time school nurse. And so between those three, community stakeholders, we just have put our all into it, and it really has made such a difference. It's so powerful and so important. Just something that we have got to do for our students, building those relationships. I know last year, something that we did, since we were able to come back face to face, is that when we did open house, we did it differently, and we did one-on-one appointments with our families and really got to know our families before the kids even came into school. And that's something that we carried over for this year. And it's just really powerful to get to know the families of your students before they even come into the classroom.
So interesting for your question, because just today, Candace Walker was here in my classroom teaching my middle schoolers about calm corners and how the brain functions, and when you flip your lid, how to get back online, and what kind of tools you have carrying with you anywhere you are, and then also what we have specifically in the classroom. If you need something, if you need some coping strategies, fabulous presentation. And I know my students, they were so engaged and need such information and use those tools. And so another thing that specifically here in Watauga County that we have is we are trauma-informed schools, and we have a compassionate schools initiative and a committee, a group of folks who, from nurses to social workers, school social workers to teachers and beyond, who work to make sure that mental health, social emotional learning happens for adults as well as for kids. And so we're trying to take care of everybody. Because it's a time where it's really important for everybody. Folks, our job is here to be learning and teaching, but also to be realizing that we have human beings here, and there are just so many things that we already know. We know this, that happen outside of the classroom, the school building walls, that affect what happens inside. And so I just feel like this awareness is really beneficial. And specifically for me, but just in general, it's just really, really helpful.
One thing that I think is that came out of virtual learning for me as an educator, and I think I can speak for other people that I work with as well, is that the connections that I make with the families are tighter now than they've ever been. And I do teach at the Alamance virtual school. So like I see children's homes every single day. I see like one of my students, her little brother joins music class every single time it happens. So you're making those connections, and I send more messages home, and I'm making more contact with parents because I want my students to be extremely successful, and it's a different situation for them, right? Now, there are teachers that do this all the time. This is not like some people might listen and be like, that's what everyone does all the time already, Poquette. But for me, I think it was a strength that I increased this year, and I hope that continues. I think what's really neat is that we now see how really, really, really important the parental support, the adult or the grown-up support, the familial support is in our education system. And it's not just the child goes to school for a certain amount of time, the child is done with the grade, they move on to the next grade. It's like it's a village. It's been going on for a long time. We need everyone to support, and not just the academic, but to support the emotional child, support the behavioral, support all that, and to support our teachers too. Because as Erin said, we are humans and we only have so much bandwidth to do certain things, and we want to share our love all the time, but we also realize there has to be a point where we say, wait, we need help. We need the support. We need parents, and parents might say the same thing. We're like, we're here for you, parents. So I think it's that connectivity that I'm seeing more of, and it's just so important to make everyone successful around the board: parents, community members, students, staff.
Thank you so much for being here. After the break, we will be back to continue the conversation.
Education Matters is brought to you each week in part by Town Bank, serving others, enriching lives.
Welcome back to this conversation with our Regional Teachers of the Year. I was just curious if you have any thoughts on, what our schools or districts do need and why that has been so important to you.
Last year was, I don't want to misspeak, but from my experience, every Alamance-Burlington school had a full-time nurse. And I'm not positive that has happened in the past, because 2 years ago, my first year here, there wasn't a nurse at every school. There's some shared nurses. So to have that support for our teachers and for our office staff, that there's a full-time nurse at every single school, is so important, because there's just so many things and medications and needs that these children have, that to have someone there just in the morning is not conducive to their learning, and it's not conducive to the success of our schools. And having social workers and counselors, I think every school at least has one full-time counselor. Some may be in a position where Jen was mentioning that they're shared and maybe teams, but those are the things that you may not see face to face every single day. So it's easy to not understand why they're important. But having that support staff to support our students and teachers is vital.
In order to teach our children, do they have what they need to learn, and how do I learn? How do I cope with and work through this? That's a skill that is beyond, that's a life skill. And it takes everyone on board, to feed into that child. Going back to that, we also have an initiative called Calm Minds and Kind Hearts. We're seeing that it is so important. It's not just an elementary thing. It's something that needs to carry on throughout, because we want our students, when they graduate, regardless of what has happened to them or things that have happened throughout, that they are able to have the support that they need to become the very best versions of themselves. And, here, I know from my experience here, it takes everybody.
We know that teachers are the number one school-related factor that impacts student outcomes. And so you'll often hear us sharing that on this show, because we know how important each of you is to our students. And one of the things that I know as a state we're also struggling with is recruiting and retaining high qualified and well-prepared educators. So I would love to hear from you. What do you think we need to do as a state, as districts, as schools, in order to recruit and retain those high quality teachers like each of you?
We have a program where our middle schoolers work as assistants and helpers, where they are peer mentors, giving them experiences even before they're out of elementary school, in teaching roles. I think that is important. Specifically here in Watauga, I can speak to our partnership with Appalachian State University. I know the Wright College of Education and the Hayes School of Music. We partner back and forth and we have awesome. I have an intern right now. She's just outstanding. I'm learning a ton from her. And so making sure that those partnerships, where and when they can be available, are just nurtured. You know that we're here because we want to work for children and families. And our work to support them starts with that passion. And so nurturing that in folks who are pre-service educators is critical.
The passion, just igniting that passion, and not only igniting it, but carrying it through. Also, I know within our region, and I think across the state and the country, when we talk about equity, and in the classroom, retaining letting students need to see themselves in the classroom and making sure that students see themselves in their teacher. And so, we have to have that discussion too of, what can we do to, in general, retain teachers, but also retain teachers of color. I think that's something that we really need to, we need to focus on. Studies show, the research is clear that when students see themselves in the classroom, they have a stronger academic success and a better social and emotional learning outcome. And also when you talk about, yes, we are in it for the passion and our heart is there, but also to be empowered with the voice and the respect that comes along with being involved in decisions that are made that affect our classrooms. And I feel like sometimes a part of course, we talk about the financial aspect of it, but then I think we need to look at when teachers don't feel heard or respected, that becomes part of why we hear about teachers are leaving. So beefing that up, and our regional team is working really hard together to build those networks and create those groups and outlets where we are the pipeline to getting to hear, make sure their voices are heard.
So in Alamance-Burlington, we have a program that's newly minted called the Alamance Scholars Program, which works with high school students, and they go through Alamance Community College and then through Elon University, and they come and they serve in the schools that they were part of. So it's really keeping our students in our community and turning them into the educators of the future. And I would really love to see certain things like that happen across the state. And also, like what Erin had mentioned about having middle schoolers trying this teaching thing out, high schoolers, like having opportunities for them to have almost like a practicum where they can try it out and see if this is something that they enjoy. And I think we do that a lot for our science and nursing and different types of things, but I love to see that for our humanities as well, because I think then we can kind of hook them a little earlier. And I also want to make sure that our universities are partnering with our districts, and are we really partnering with our HBCUs, and are we getting the diversity that we need in our districts into all the districts, not just necessarily the ones that are like regionally and locally close to those universities.
Well, and we do love that many of you are engaged in the Education Policy Fellowship Program as well with the Public School Forum, and know that just learning more where you can elevate your voice and is really an important aspect of that work. As we wrap up, I would just love to ask a question related to that. Is there any legislation or policies, and knowing right now the budget is going through the legislature and ultimately to the governor, that you feel like is particularly affecting you and the work that you do every single day that you all would like to talk about?
Well, I know there are many rural areas in North Carolina, but northeastern North Carolina is extremely rural, and the budget part of the Leandro case, and concerning that, how is that going to go, and the resources and budgetary items that our children all across the state, but I'm very passionate about, especially in the Northeast region, of having that equal access to an equitable education.
And Kelly, did you want to add something there? Is there any other policy or piece going through that you think particularly impacts your work?
Reiterate what Jen said, that we need to handle this Leandro, and we need to get money to where students that need the money, and every student needs the money, right? Every teacher needs the money, but we've got to have a sound, basic, equitable education. And we also need to do that with supporting our teachers financially. And yes, we do it for the passion. Yes, we do it because we love it. Do we want to have highly qualified teachers in our classrooms? We need to pay them. So I think that's something that really does need to be addressed.
Yes, well, we appreciate you lifting up those areas, and just appreciate all you are doing every single day and the passion you bring. And we hope you'll come back and talk more, because I feel like I didn't get to all my questions today because we had so much to discuss. So any just final quick words of wisdom, Erin, before we close out today?
I just think thank you to the Public School Forum, and just please find us, our cohort. We are trying to make people aware. We just think people don't know the amazing, awesome things that we are, not just us, that our colleagues are doing. And so we are trying to raise awareness. Please find us. Please, talk to your child's teacher, get involved. We are trying to educate you about the amazing things that we are doing. And that I hope will in turn just transform that culture that we have just discussed. I think that will, we're trying to get it out there.
Well, thank you all so much. We're so grateful that you're our Regional Teachers of the Year and for all the leadership that you're bringing to this and to our state. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
After the break, this week's final word. 27 years ago, some of North Carolina's most poverty-stricken school districts came together to do something about the educational conditions of their children. Together with plaintiff families, they initiated a lawsuit against the state of North Carolina, asserting that the state wasn't doing enough to ensure all children were able to access a sound basic education, something to which our state constitution specifically says that all children are entitled. That case is known as Leandro, and it continues to be at the heart of the debate when it comes to funding our schools here in North Carolina. Over the course of the last century, judges overseeing the Leandro case have continued to find that the state is not meeting its constitutional obligation to provide our public schools the resources necessary to ensure our children have what they need to become successful citizens who can compete in a global economy. Last week, Judge David Lee ordered our state's legislative leaders to fully fund the 7 components of the Leandro Action Plan that the defendants in the case, the State Board of Education and the state of North Carolina, have developed to meet our constitutional obligation to provide a sound basic education for all students. That deadline is weeks away, on October 15th. What is particularly interesting is that the 7 areas of investment in the Leandro Plan are hardly controversial. They include creating systems that ensure a high-quality teacher for every classroom and a high-quality principal for every school. They require a finance system that leads to adequate, predictable, and equitable funding for every district, and an assessment and accountability system with multiple measures. The Leandro Plan includes supports for low-performing schools and districts, a system of early childhood education with access to pre-K, and alignment with and readiness for post-secondary opportunities. These components are tangible, and most people quickly see the connection among the areas identified and a sound basic education for all students. The challenge, however, seems to be in fully funding these components in alignment with Leandro. At this time, our General Assembly is still in session, working on a state budget that serves as the primary vehicle for funding our public schools. Our public schools had to start operating this fiscal year on July 1st without a state budget in place. However, the timing of this order offers our legislative leaders an opportunity to address the mandate that we equitably support our public school students. Addressing each of these and other critical areas requires an investment in human and fiscal resources. With the appropriate policies and resources, the investments will help address the immediate needs of our schools and districts as we continue to grapple with COVID-19, and they will also support critical areas for long-term efforts to ensure that every child in North Carolina will graduate prepared for college, career, and engaged citizenship. North Carolina is fortunate to have significant resources available with a multi-billion-dollar surplus to address the needs of our schools and students, the understanding of what is needed, and the will of education stakeholders and policymakers to enact purposeful and effective policies. We must use this critical point in time to lay the groundwork for accelerating investments and innovations in education for all of our students. Our schools, districts, and communities do not just need or ask for more money for the sake of having more money. The need, as it has been for decades, is for investments in these specific and other critical areas that research has shown makes a difference for students. Thank you for taking time with us to learn and think about education. That's all for today, and we'll see you next week.